The pristine white Range Rover sat there like a monument to entitlement, blocking the only access to Marcus's auto shop, while Karen stood arms crossed, smirking at his desperation. 20 years of building his business, and this woman thought she could destroy it all with a single phone call to the city. But when Marcus's crew fired up that old tow truck and the hydraulics started groaning, Karen's smug expression began to crack. She had no idea that her perfectly planned revenge was about to backfire in the most spectacular way possible, because sometimes karma drives a tow truck. Marcus Rivera wiped the grease from his hands with a shop rag that had seen better decades. Squinting through the morning haze at the pristine white Range Rover parked directly across his shop's entrance, not near it, not beside it, directly across it, like a middle finger made of German engineering and monthly payments that cost more than most people's rent. The woman leaning against the vehicle looked like she'd stepped out of a country club catalog, blonde hair in a perfect bob, designer athleisure wear that probably cost more than Marcus paid his guys in a week, and the kind of smile that suggested she'd been practicing it in the mirror while planning exactly this moment. "You've got to be kidding me," Marcus muttered, walking toward the woman who was clearly waiting for him to notice her strategic parking job. Behind him, the sounds of Rivera's auto repair were already in full swing. 20 years he'd been building this place from nothing, a single bay garage in the industrial district that he'd turned into a 6-bay operation, employing 12 people, good people, family men like Tony Castellanos who'd been with him since the beginning, and young kids like Miguel Santos whom Marcus was training to be the next generation of mechanics. The shop sat on a corner lot, with the main entrance facing Industrial Avenue, the only way for customers to drive in and out, and this woman had parked her Range Rover perpendicular to that entrance, effectively turning Rivera's auto repair into an island. "Excuse me," Marcus called out as he approached. "You can't park there. That's blocking my business entrance." The woman, probably mid-40s, with the kind of tan that came from country club pools rather than honest work, turned toward him with that practiced smile cranked up to maximum voltage. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice dripping with the kind of false sweetness that immediately put Marcus on edge. "I'm Karen Morrison, and I'm afraid there's been a terrible misunderstanding." Marcus glanced at his watch. 7:30 a.m. He had Mrs. Patterson coming in at 8 for her Honda's transmission work, the Valdez family dropping off their truck for brake repair, and 3 other appointments before lunch. All of them would have to park on the street and walk. If this woman didn't move her vehicle? What kind of misunderstanding? Marcus asked, though something in Karen's demeanor told him he wasn't going to like the answer. Karen reached into her designer handbag and pulled out an official-looking document. "Well, it seems your business license has some irregularities. I've filed a complaint with the city about various code violations, and I'm afraid you'll need to suspend operations until they can conduct a proper inspection." Marcus felt his stomach drop. What violations? Oh, the usual things. Improper disposal of automotive fluids, noise ordinances, suspected unlicensed work. Karen's smile never wavered. "Nothing personal, you understand? Just civic responsibility. Lady, I've been running this shop for 20 years. Every permit, every license, every environmental protocol. I'm sure you believe that," Karen interrupted, her tone shifting slightly. Less fake sweetness, more barely concealed contempt. "But the city takes these matters very seriously, especially when multiple complaints are filed." Multiple complaints. Karen's smile widened. "Oh yes. I've been very thorough in documenting the issues with this establishment. The city inspector will be here by 10 a.m. to begin a comprehensive review. Until then, I'm afraid I can't allow any vehicles in or out. For safety reasons, you understand?" The pieces started clicking together in Marcus's mind. This wasn't random. This wasn't some concerned citizen stumbling across violations. This was targeted, planned, and personal. "Who are you?" Marcus asked. "And what do you want?" "I told you, I'm Karen Morrison. I live in Hillcrest Estates." She gestured vaguely toward the affluent neighborhood that bordered the industrial district. "And what I want is for businesses like yours to operate within the law." Hillcrest Estates? Marcus knew exactly what this was about now. 6 months ago, the city had proposed rezoning part of the industrial district to allow residential development, high-end condos and townhouses for the growing tech sector. Marcus and the other business owners had fought it, arguing that the area was vital for the blue-collar jobs that kept the city's economy running. They'd won. Barely, but they'd won. Apparently, some people weren't ready to accept that victory. "This is harassment," Marcus said. "You can't just block a business entrance based on some made-up complaints." Made up? Karen's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. "Mr. Rivera, I've been documenting violations at this location for weeks. Late-night work causing noise disturbances, suspicious fluid stains in the parking area, workers without proper safety equipment." She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through photos. "I have quite a comprehensive file." Marcus looked at the images on her screen, pictures of his shop taken from various angles, time-stamped photos of employees, close-ups of perfectly normal automotive work. All of it presented like evidence of criminal activity. "You've been stalking my business? I prefer concerned monitoring, and before you get any ideas about having me towed, I should mention that I've already spoken with Officer Phillips from the city police. He's aware of my complaint and supports the temporary closure until inspection. Marcus felt the morning getting away from him like water through cupped hands. Mrs. Patterson would be here in 30 minutes. His guys were already working on 3 vehicles that customers expected back today. The shop's reputation was built on reliability, on being there when people needed them. Look, Marcus said, trying to keep his voice level. I don't know what your real problem is with my shop, but taking it out on my customers isn't going to solve anything. These are working people who depend on their vehicles. Single mothers trying to get to work, families who can't afford to miss appointments. Perhaps they should find a more reputable establishment. The fake concern was gone now, replaced by open hostility. Karen Morrison wasn't pretending to be a concerned citizen anymore. She was showing her true colors, and they were ugly. You know what this is really about? Marcus said. The rezoning vote. You people wanted to turn this into your personal playground, and when that didn't work out, you decided to make life hell for the businesses that stood in your way. Karen's smile returned, sharper now. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm simply a citizen concerned about environmental and safety violations in my neighborhood. Your neighborhood. Lady, this is the industrial district. It's been here longer than your fancy development. Longer than you've lived in this city, I'd bet. Times change, Mr. Rivera. Areas evolve. What was acceptable 20 years ago might not meet today's standards. Behind Marcus, he could hear his crew arriving for work. Tony's old Chevy pickup, Miguel's motorcycle. The sounds of working people starting another day, not knowing that their livelihoods were under attack by someone who'd never gotten grease under her fingernails or worried about making payroll. Listen to me very carefully, Marcus said, stepping closer to Karen, not threatening but making sure she understood he wasn't backing down. I've got customers depending on me, people who work 2 jobs to keep their cars running, who can't afford to go to the dealership for every little thing. You might think this is some kind of game, but for them, it's survival. How touching, Karen said. Perhaps if your business was run properly, we wouldn't be having this conversation. That's when Marcus heard Tony's voice behind him. Boss, what's going on? Why can't I get the Valdez truck out of Bay 3? Marcus turned to see his head mechanic approaching, concern written across his weathered face. Tony Castellano's head, been with Rivera's Auto Repair since the 2nd year, back when it was just Marcus and one other guy working out of a single bay. He'd helped build this place, trained half the crew, and treated the business like it was his own. This lady has some concerns about our permits, Marcus said carefully. She's blocking the entrance until the city can do an inspection. Tony looked from Marcus to Karen to the Range Rover positioned like a roadblock. His expression darkened. Ma'am, I've got 3 customers coming to pick up their vehicles this morning, working people who need their cars to get to their jobs. You can't just— I most certainly can, Karen interrupted. I have every right to park on a public street, and every responsibility to ensure that potentially hazardous operations are properly regulated. Hazardous operations. Tony's voice rose. Lady, we change oil and fix brakes. We're not running a nuclear reactor. Environmental contamination is a serious matter, Mr. Tony Castellanos, and I've been working on cars for 30 years. I know environmental protocols better than you know whatever it is you do for a living. Karen's composure cracked slightly. I don't have to justify my concerns to you. Officer Daniel Phillips arrived exactly 12 minutes after Karen's frantic phone call, his patrol car sliding to a stop behind the Range Rover with the practiced ease of someone who'd been breaking up neighborhood disputes for 15 years. Marcus watched through the shop's front window as Karen rushed toward the officer, her carefully composed facade cracking under pressure. Officer Phillips, thank God you're here. Karen's voice carried across the parking lot, pitched high with manufactured distress. These people are threatening to tow my vehicle. They're being completely unreasonable about a simple civic matter. Phillips, a heavy-set man in his 40s, with the weary expression of someone who'd seen every type of human stupidity imaginable, looked from Karen to the wrecker truck, where Tony sat calmly in the cab with his hands resting on the steering wheel. The hydraulic boom was still extended, positioned directly over the Range Rover like a mechanical sword of Damocles. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm down and explain the situation, Phillips said, pulling out his notebook. Start from the beginning. Marcus wiped his hands on his coveralls and walked outside, his crew trailing behind him. 20 years of dealing with difficult customers and city bureaucracy had taught him the value of staying calm under pressure, especially when dealing with law enforcement. Morning, Officer Phillips, Marcus said. I am Marcus Rivera, owner of Rivera's Auto Repair. Mrs. Morrison here has parked her vehicle in a way that's blocking access to my business. That's a lie, Karen interjected. I'm parked on a public street, which is perfectly legal. These people are harassing me because I filed legitimate complaints about safety and environmental violations. Phillips looked at the Range Rover, positioned perpendicular to the shop's entrance, then at the no parking commercial vehicle access signs posted along the curb. His expression didn't change, but Marcus caught the slight shake of his head. Mrs. Morrison, you are aware that you're blocking a commercial entrance, right? I'm exercising my rights as a citizen to ensure public safety by parking illegally. Karen's face flushed red. I am not parked illegally. This is a public street. Ma'am, this section of curb is designated for commercial vehicle access. See those signs? Phillips pointed to the clearly posted markers. You can't park here any more than you can park in front of a fire hydrant. Marcus felt a surge of vindication, but he kept his expression neutral. Let the facts speak for themselves. Officer, I appreciate you clarifying that, Marcus said, but there's more to this situation. Mrs. Morrison hasn't just blocked my entrance by accident. She's admitted that she's doing it deliberately to shut down my business based on complaints she's filed with the city. Phillips's attention sharpened. Is that true, ma'am? I filed legitimate concerns about violations. That's not what I asked. Did you park here specifically to prevent vehicles from entering this business? Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Marcus could see her trying to find a way to answer that wouldn't make her look like exactly what she was, someone using harassment tactics to achieve what she couldn't accomplish through legal means. I, the public, has a right to ensure businesses operate safely. Ma'am, that's not an answer. Did you or did you not park here to prevent access to this business? The silence stretched out like a held breath. Karen looked around desperately, as if the answer might be written on one of the nearby buildings. Finally, she lifted her chin with defiant pride. Yes, and I have every right to do so until the city can properly inspect this establishment for violations. Phillips closed his notebook with a snap that sounded like a gavel. No, ma'am, you don't. What you have is a citation for illegal parking in a commercial access zone, and if you don't move your vehicle immediately, you'll have an additional citation for interfering with a business operation. You can't be serious. Ma'am, I'm always serious when it comes to the law. You have 5 minutes to move your vehicle before I call for a tow truck. Karen's carefully constructed world was collapsing in real time. The authority figure she'd counted on to support her harassment campaign had just sided with the people she was trying to destroy. Marcus almost felt sorry for her almost. This is ridiculous. I demand to speak to your supervisor. You're welcome to file a complaint at the station. After you move your vehicle, that's when Karen played her trump card. Officer Phillips, perhaps I should mention that my husband is Richard Morrison, from Morrison Development Group. We've been significant contributors to the Policemen's Benevolent Association for years. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus felt his crew tense behind him, waiting to see if money and connections would triumph over simple justice. Phillips's expression went completely flat, the kind of professional masked cops wore when they were about to do something they'd been trained not to do. Ma'am, I don't care if your husband is the mayor. The law is the law, and you're in violation of it. Move your vehicle, now. Karen's face went from red to purple. This is outrageous. You're taking their side because I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm enforcing traffic regulations. 5 minutes, Mrs. Morrison, or your Range Rover gets towed at your expense. But Karen wasn't done. Marcus watched her pull out her phone again, this time with the desperate energy of someone playing their last card. Richard, it's me. I need you to call someone at the police department immediately. I'm being harassed by some mechanics, and the officer here is what do you mean? What am I doing? I'm protecting our investment in the Hillcrest development. Bye. She stopped talking, her face going pale as whoever was on the other end of the line apparently wasn't giving her the response she expected. But Richard, you said that stopping the rezoning opposition was a priority. What do you mean? I'm on my own. This affects property values for the entire development. Marcus couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Karen's increasing desperation told the story. Whatever backing she thought she had from her husband's development company was evaporating in real time. Richard, don't you dare hang up on me. But apparently, Richard had done exactly that. Karen stared at her phone with the expression of someone who'd just watched their parachute fail to deploy. Phillips checked his watch. 3 minutes, ma'am. That's when Miguel stepped forward. The youngest member of Marcus's crew had been quietly watching the entire confrontation. But now he walked past everyone and stopped directly in front of Karen. Lady, you don't know me, but I know you. Karen blinked, clearly not expecting to be addressed by someone she probably saw as beneath her notice. I'm sorry, Miguel Santos. My mom cleans houses in Hillcrest Estates, including yours. Marcus felt a chill of recognition. He'd heard Miguel mention his mother's cleaning business before, but he'd never connected it to this situation. I don't see how that's relevant. It's relevant because I know exactly who you are and what you do. Miguel's voice was quiet, but it carried the kind of authority that comes from personal knowledge. My mom's told me about the Hillcrest. Ladies, how you treat the cleaning staff, the gardeners, the people who work for you. Like we're invisible until you need someone to blame for something. Karen took a step backward. I have no idea what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Just like you had no idea that Mrs. Patterson, the lady who was supposed to bring her car in this morning, is a single mother who works 2 jobs to support her kids. Just like you had no idea that the Valdez family needs their truck back today, because Mr. Valdez uses it for his landscaping business. The business that probably maintains half the lawns in your precious development. The color drained from Karen's face as Miguel continued. You see, that's the thing about people like you. You think you can mess with working folks like it's some kind of game. Like we don't have families depending on us, bills to pay, responsibilities, that don't stop just because you're having a tantrum about some rezoning vote. I am not having a tantrum. Then what do you call this? Miguel gestured at the blocked entrance. The Range Rover positioned like a barricade. You lost a political fight, so now you're taking it out on people who had nothing to do with it. People who were just trying to keep their jobs and serve their community. Phillips was watching this exchange with increasing interest, his citation book still open in his hand. Mrs. Morrison, is it true that this dispute is related to the recent rezoning vote? Karen's silence was answer enough. Because if that's the case, we might be looking at more than just illegal parking. Using harassment to interfere with a business operation in retaliation for political activity could constitute. That's not what this is about. Karen finally exploded. This is about safety violations and environmental concerns and getting revenge because your development group didn't get their way, Tony interjected, stepping up beside Miguel. Lady, we've all heard about Morrison Development Group's plans for this area. Luxury condos, high-end retail, pushing out all the working-class businesses that have been here for decades. There's nothing wrong with development and progress. Nothing wrong with honest development, Marcus said. But there's plenty wrong with using harassment and fake complaints to drive out businesses that voted against your interests. Phillips was scribbling notes now, and Marcus could see that. The officer was beginning. Control, this is Unit 7-4. I need a supervisor and a detective at my location immediately. I've got a potential corruption case that needs immediate attention. Officer Phillips's radio crackled to life as he called for backup, his voice carrying the professional calm of someone who'd just stumbled onto something far bigger than a simple parking violation. Karen Morrison stood frozen beside her Range Rover, the full weight of her confession finally sinking in. Wait, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean ma'am, you need to stop talking. Right now. Phillips held up his hand, his expression deadly serious. Anything you say from this point forward can and will be used against you in a court of law. Marcus watched the scene unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and disbelief. 20 minutes ago, he'd been facing the potential shutdown of his business. Now Karen Morrison was looking at potential felony charges for corruption and conspiracy. The transformation was stunning. The perfectly coiffed suburban matron who'd arrived with such confidence was now pale and shaking, her designer clothes suddenly looking like a costume she'd put on to play a role she no longer understood. Officer Phillips, Karen said, desperation creeping into her voice. Surely we can discuss this reasonably. I was upset. I misspoke, ma'am. I'm going to stop you right there. You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly suggest you exercise that right until you can speak with an attorney. But Karen was beyond rational thought now. The carefully constructed world of privilege and influence that had always protected her was crumbling in real time, and she was grasping at anything that might stop the collapse. You don't understand. My husband's company, Morrison Development Group, we are bringing millions of dollars in investment to this city. Jobs, tax revenue, growth. You can't seriously think, ma'am, corruption is corruption, regardless of how much money is involved. Phillips was writing furiously in his notebook now, and based on what you just told me, we're potentially looking at bribery, conspiracy to commit fraud, abuse of process, and harassment charges. That's when the first news van arrived. Marcus hadn't even noticed the small crowd that had gathered. During the confrontation, employees from neighboring businesses, early morning commuters, people walking their dogs, all drawn by the unusual sight of a police car, a tow truck, and an obviously heated argument. One of them had apparently called a local news station. The Channel 7 van pulled up just as Detective Sarah Chen arrived in an unmarked sedan. Chen was a small woman in her 30s with sharp eyes and the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that suggested she'd seen every type of white-collar crime imaginable. Phillips, what do we have? Chen asked, approaching with a digital recorder in her hand. Suspect admitted to bribing city officials in connection with a harassment campaign against a local business. The harassment was apparently retaliation for the business owner's opposition to a development project. Chen's eyebrows shot up. She admitted to bribery. On the record, multiple witnesses, Phillips confirmed, gesturing to Marcus, Tony, Miguel, and the growing crowd of onlookers. The news crew was setting up their equipment now, and Marcus could see the reporter, a young woman he recognized from the evening broadcasts, checking her appearance in a compact mirror while her cameraman adjusted his equipment. Karen noticed the news crew at the same time, and her remaining composure finally shattered completely. No, you can't film this. This is a private matter. Turn those cameras off. Ma'am, you're on a public street, Detective Chen said calmly. The media has every right to document what's happening here. But my reputation, my family, this will destroy. Perhaps you should have considered that before engaging in criminal activity. Chen replied without sympathy. Now, I need you to place your hands behind your back. You're arresting me. For what? For starters, admission to bribery of public officials. Depending on what we find when we investigate your claims, We could be looking at additional charges. The handcuffs clicked into place with a sound that seemed to echo across the entire parking lot. Karen Morrison, pillar of Hillcrest Estates Society, wife of a prominent developer, self-appointed guardian of community standards, was being arrested in front of a growing crowd of spectators and rolling news cameras. "This is insane," Karen shouted as Chen led her toward the police car. "I want my lawyer. I want my husband. Someone call Richard." "You'll have the opportunity to make phone calls at the station," Chen said professionally. "Right now, you need to focus on not making your situation worse." As Karen was placed in the back of the police car, the Channel 7 reporter approached Marcus with her cameraman in tow. "Mr. Rivera, I'm Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. Can you tell us what happened here this morning?" Marcus looked at the camera, then at his crew, then at the police car where Karen Morrison sat behind reinforced glass, and felt the surreal nature of the entire situation wash over him. "Honestly, we just wanted to open our shop and serve our customers. Mrs. Morrison had other ideas. Can you elaborate on her accusations about safety violations?" "There weren't any real violations," Tony interjected, stepping up beside Marcus. "She admitted that the complaints were retaliation for our opposition to a development project. She was trying to shut us down because we voted against rezoning this area for luxury condos." The reporter's eyes lit up. This was clearly a bigger story than she'd expected when she'd responded to a routine police call. "Are you saying this was politically motivated harassment?" "I'm saying she admitted to bribing city officials to interfere with our business," Miguel said, his young voice carrying clearly in the morning air. "She said they owned judges and city council members. That's not politics, that's corruption." The reporter was scribbling notes furiously while her cameraman captured everything. Marcus realized that this story was about to go far beyond a simple business dispute. If Karen's claims about bribing officials were true, this could explode into a citywide corruption scandal. "Mr. Rivera, what do you plan to do now?" Marcus looked around at his shop, his employees, the customers who were starting to arrive and finding themselves witnesses to an arrest. Mrs. Patterson had pulled up in her Honda and was staring at the scene with obvious confusion. "Now we're going to get back to work. We've got cars to fix and customers to serve. That's what we do." "But what about the city inspection?" Mrs. Morrison mentioned. "Let them inspect," Marcus said with quiet confidence. "We've got nothing to hide. Every permit, every license, every environmental protocol, it's all above board. Always has been." As if summoned by his words, a city inspector's vehicle pulled up to the scene. Harold Kaczynski climbed out of his truck with the weary expression of a man who'd been dragged out of his office for what he'd been told was an emergency inspection. "Where's the business owner?" Kaczynski called out, looking around at the crowd of police, reporters, and mechanics. "That would be me," Marcus said, walking over to shake the inspector's hand. "Marcus Rivera, Harold Kaczynski, City Inspections. I got a call about violations at your shop from Mrs. Morrison, who's currently under arrest for admitting to corruption and filing false complaints." Kaczynski looked over at the police car where Karen sat, then back at Marcus, then pulled out his clipboard with a long sigh. "Well, I'm here now. Might as well take a look around. Though I should mention that your shop passed its last inspection with flying colors. One of the cleanest operations in the district. Feel free to inspect anything you want," Marcus said. "My crew and I will be happy to show you around." As Kaczynski began his inspection, Detective Chen approached Marcus with her notebook open. "Mr. Rivera, I'm going to need statements from you and your employees about what Mrs. Morrison said regarding bribing public officials. This could be part of a much larger investigation." "Whatever you need," Marcus said. "But can I ask when?" she said. "They owned judges and city council members? How seriously should we take that?" Chen's expression darkened. "Very seriously. If even half of what she claimed is true, we're looking at the biggest corruption scandal the city has seen in decades." The implications were staggering. Marcus had thought he was just defending his business against harassment. Instead, he'd apparently stumbled onto evidence of systematic corruption that could reach the highest levels of city government. Detective Tony said, approaching with a thoughtful expression. "There's something else you should know. The rezoning vote Mrs. Morrison mentioned. It wasn't close. It was supposed to be, but several council members who were expected to support the development suddenly switched sides at the last minute." "Switched sides, how?" "They said they'd received new information about the community impact. Information that made them reconsider their positions." Chen was writing rapidly. "Do you know what kind of information? Economic studies? Environmental impact reports? Community surveys all showing that the development would hurt the local economy more than it would help?" Tony paused. "At the time we thought we'd just done a good job presenting our case, and now I'm wondering if some of those council members weren't as bought as Mrs. Morrison thought they were." The news van's satellite dish was extending now, and Marcus realized that this story was about to go live. Channel 7 was preparing for a new news bulletin that would broadcast